The white world has always tried to rob and discredit us of our history. They tell us that Tutankhamun, the king of Egypt, who reigned about the year 1350 BC, was not a black man, that the ancient civilization of Egypt and the pharaohs was not of our race. But that does not make the truth unreal. Every student of history of impartial mind knows.
Do you know what
Those are white people, by the way.
Who are white people?
The Egyptians are not African. I'm sorry.
Do you know where Egypt is?
Yes, it's in North Africa.
Okay, stop. You stop right there. You just said that you said the Egyptians are not African.
Are white South Africans?
It is vocally impossible to speak the Meta
That's how you maintain white supremacy, getting groups of people to all agree on the same damn lie. That's how white supremacy is maintained. Groups of people who believe in white supremacy come up with the same lie, stick to that lie, and stay on.
These are nostrils. It is a biological fact that Africans have a wider nose because we have to consume more oxygen on an inhale.
No matter what, and then get what they need done based on the lie that they've all agreed to. We see that happening in case after case. When we see black children getting their brains blown out, the white supremacists will put out a lie. Well, the black kid was aggressive. The black kid was resisting. Then all the other white supremacists, prosecutors, white supremacist media, white supremacist jurors.
But when we look at the Egyptian statues and busts and you see them alpine noses, nobody has nothing to say about it.
Millions will all agree on that one lie. So yes, a whole bunch planned on doing that all along. Then they pointed out the tokenized black women.
When we see Ramses with red hair, we got people making up lame excuses, talking about, oh, it's because some scientific chemical reaction.
Use black women as pawns and then push them out there and say, hey, it's not racist. Look, a couple of these black women are saying the same thing.
Well, there's research that we're hearing today that shows half of all Western European men are somehow related.
Use black women as pawns and then push them out there and say, hey, it's not racist. Look, a couple of these black women are saying the same thing.
What's up with this?
It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So this is coming out of Switzerland, and the researchers there have found that not only do half of Western European men have this connection, genetic profile connection, but 70% of men in Britain, which is astounding. But they all have the same genetic
people
profile.
Who are white.
How are people?
Well, you're allowing them. You're pushing them out there to say the same thing. You don't give a shit about black women. Black women out here suffering at the hands of white supremacy.
This is why African people talk like who or my name is Kamu, because we have to take a deeper breath because of the thin oxygen layer of density.
Ancestry as King Tut from Egypt way back when.
It's hard to believe. I mean, King Tutankhamun, I think, lived probably to be about 14. How did he get around with all that?
Yeah, he didn't get past his teenage years, and he only ruled for 10 years. But I guess it goes back even further than that. And here's what's really shocking about this. Less than 1% of modern-day Egyptians have that same connection.
And then you take a crew like the Amara Squad, right? And they'll attack the Hebrews on things like this. Why don't y'all take a DNA test and see if you're really Hebrew? See if you got that DNA. Well, they did the DNA test on a lot of these pharaohs. And guess what? Even to now, I heard people try to debunk it with like Tutankhamun. But if either you're going to accept the white man's science or not, it's not white now. Now all of a sudden it becomes white man's science. Before that, they argue, well, it's not white man's science, it's just science. But when the white man say Tutankhamun is related to 70% of the Europeans on Earth, now all of a sudden, oh, we can't trust the European. Well, when can we trust them? Why is it convenient you trust them when it suits your philosophy? So either he got the science down or we don't, because according to him, Tutankhamun was a European that's related to 70% of the Caucasians.
This is why African people talk deep and you make fun of them, because they're literally taking a full breath. So why is this important? The African could never speak the fucking Meta Nature in the way you speak it today, bitch, because they have a different accent.
Getting groups of people to all agree on the same damn lie. That's how white supremacy is maintained. Groups of people who believe in white supremacy come up with the same lie, stick to that lie, and stay on code no matter what, and then get what they need done based on the lie that they've all agreed to. We see
Now,
that
new
happen.
DNA analysis of Egyptian mummies has revealed that, unlike modern Egyptians, those living in ancient times had little kinship with sub-Saharan Africans. The study found that ancient Egyptians had close genetic ties with people from parts of what are now Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Israel.
People who are white.
So it's scientifically a fact that they could not have been speaking the shit that you niggas are speaking today. Say meta nature and see if you don't hold your breath. Try it, family. Ain't nobody at home with you in the room. Just say meta nature.
Maintain white supremacy, getting groups of people to all agree on the same damn lie. That's how white supremacy is maintained. Groups of people who believe in white supremacy come up with the same lie, stick to that lie, and stay on code no matter what, and then get what they need done based on the lie.
Now try to say that shit
agreed
in the
to.
African. Try to say meta nature. You can't do it. The ease is like in prison. It's like a fucking prison cell on your goddamn vocal cords. You cannot do it. Period. You cannot say meta nature in the African dialect.
Can I get a little applause? It's too late. It is too late. It's too late. I'm going to go through that video because this is just about the miseducation of the albino. Propaganda. I need to roll my R's when I say it. I don't really want to cuss that much in this, but that's a motherfucker. These are all different. One or two may be cute. This is like from a blind British team. They didn't know who they was dealing with. Somebody didn't give them the memo. They was just going by the skull shape. And once again, these are his parents because he's inbred. So they had kids and their kids made him. So basically, these are his parents. And the people who did this, they know this. They know this. They know this skull shape. That's one of the reasons I don't really mess with oid science too much like that. Cacainoid and whooptoid, mectoid. I'm trying to think of the exotic oids. The popular ones are mongoloid, negroid, or is it mongoloid, negroid, and caucasoid? I think I don't mess with oid science because that's a shell game. They see this head shape, they see this, and they know what they're dealing with. Now, just think about all this based on a lie. Based on a lie. Because you ever seen, what's that movie? Borat. I watched that movie. I thought Kazakhstan really had some potassium. I thought Kazakhstan had premium potassium. It was just a movie. It wasn't true. You know, when I was a kid, I was kind of a Hollywood brat, and I was on a movie set, and I sit down, and I'm sitting on what I think is a rock, but it's a little bit too soft. I'm getting too comfortable, so I touch it, and the rock is made out of foam. That's how this lie came around. You know, the actual magazine stuff that I showed you from Net Geo in part 2. You can scroll back. Maybe I'll just pull it up. Hold on. There's a lot of these, so I got to scroll. Let's see. All right, here we go. The Net Geo. There was a TV show based on this data. And an ancestry company looked at that TV show and ran what was on the TV show. And actually, it wasn't even this data. It was this data and more, because this isn't even enough data. And this was the only data that was released. The actual ancestry tests, this one, and this one,
is based on that data. This stuff is based on a TV prop. It's based on nothing. It's a lie. It's a straight up lie. They got her just showing her teeth as hard as she can. Why? I hate that they would do this, because that's wrong, to have her abase herself like that. And then you got the two faces of ancient Egypt. Slick shit. And then they showing Tut. You know what I mean? His actual ancestry test was ran. These news, CBS, they're talking about the Abu Sir mummies. In the first, because they was testing people in 85. They was testing Neanderthals, 10,000 years old bones out in the elements. Dogs and saber-toothed, they've chewed on the bones and they still test them. All kinds of timber wolves that chewed on these bones and they still they're getting full genomes out of Neanderthals. They're lying. This is fake news. Just letting you know that. Now, I'll say one thing that Lex Vortex got right. There should be more focus on West Africa, but it has to be in context, because ancient Egypt is only, like, from what I hear, 15% dug up tops. So if it's barely dug up, that's a live gold mine information. West Africa got a mine too, and Central Africa, Southern Africa. Like, supposedly that's the biggest man-made object. And who's gone down there to verify this, to do anything on this, on the wall of Benin? Because you can see it from Google Maps, but it's you kind of double, it doesn't stand out that much because it's thin and it's underneath certain things. It goes underground and stuff. These are Titchit. This is Ghana, I think. These are old. Like, this is contemporary with the Nile Valley. To some degree. Ghana is a little bit like half contemporary. It's younger. And then these are different types of writings in West Africa. In Sabiti, I think that's also in Sabiti. And then the Dinkras. And then the Dogon have a script. Yeah, she got in Sabiti, it was strange though. In Sabiti, Sabiti. I wonder if there's a connection with that, because they share supposedly, and I don't know this. Like, I'm going by other people. They'll say they share inscriptions, letters. There's not enough of us studying this. Like, I should have been taught this. This is one area where we're weak. You know what I mean? Because ancient Egypt does serve as a decoder ring when you're looking through other parts of Africa. But if you already have ancient writings, you got to bring those to the forefront. What is this saying? You know what I mean? There are people who are working with the Dogon, though. That goes way back. I think the person who's doing it the most right now is Anthony Browder.
When we look at the Egyptian statues and busts, you see them alpine noses. Nobody has nothing to say about it.
I hope that played right. If you heard that, I know you're talking about noses. If not, I got Lex on here twice. Let me play Lex again. Lex, to me, that dude is a trip. He is out there. Let it rip, Lex. Oh, no, this is Pharaoh. Ninja. Yeah, let me tell you, Pharaoh was really doing it like that. He was really, that's his thing. He was arguing that dark-skinned dude and that albino chick, that homeboy's nose was too wide to speak or writing. Like, he ain't even saying the name of the language because he don't know. I mean, that young Pharaoh has bells on his feet too much, man. He needs to take them bells off, because all he's doing is just acting a fool. And it's funny, until you look at how many fans he got to take that shit seriously. Like, yo, you have a pretend teacher. You're supposed to be a pretend student. If you're being a pretend student, don't sell your pretend teacher as an actual teacher. Just live in your escapism. Enjoy your escapism. Because they're talking noses. All right, which one of these is West African? You know what I mean? If you look at enough ancient Egyptian artwork, you know. You got all kinds of different noses. You got wide noses like most of these. You got a narrow nose like him. You know what I'm saying? This is Benin. I want to check out Benin. If I go to one spot in Africa, it'd be the Sudan. If I could go to two, Benin. You know, because they got magic wands. You know, like they put some mojo on. I mean, you can maybe use that shit. You know, if not, you can scare somebody with it because there's enough spooky people out there. You know, and it ain't just a select few. When you look at them rolled up, you know, we don't really see Egyptian artwork like this. So you got people like Lex Vortex talking about alkaline noses. Like, how much coke can you do with alkaline nose? You got to put a Q sound on it, Lex. It's aqualine. Another thing I hear is about all this. You'll hear people say ancient Egyptians weren't black. And then they'll say like Nubians. I'm like, what the hell's a Nubian? And that's a whole different thing. You know, or something like that. They weren't. I'm like, come on now. Since when did you have to be this dark to be considered black? You know what I'm saying? This was basically the usual way in there depicted. And if you're going to argue that this is multiracial, then we're going to have to do something with Greece and Rome. That's where these images are coming from. And Britain, too, if we go way back. You know, you have to include Britain in this multiracial stuff. It just shows they're not looking at the art. You know, see, when I looked in the art, I looked even deep within. For young Pharaoh to make that argument that you need an intermediate nose, because look, I know it sounds like I'm making it up, but if you listen to it, that's the only way it's coherent. I won't say it makes sense because it don't make sense, but that's the only way it's a coherent thought is if you accept that that's what he's saying. Otherwise, what is he saying? Because he's saying you can't speak it because your nose is too wide. Africans, like, that's literally what he's trying to portray. That level of scholarship. That's why I don't even take him seriously. This is why I'm not going to be talking about him anymore. Like, I'm done. I talked about him to call out behavior so people could see. And some people probably listen to me. Some people, whatever. Now it's happened so often that you're either just into that cold stuff and you ain't gonna listen to me anyway, or yo, dumbass, like you need more examples. Okay, you know what I mean? But him and Lex, with Lexo is deeper than that, though. I'll get to what it's about with Lex. It's kind of a sadder thing with Lex, but I don't know. Let me play this again, because a lot of this is kind of hard to believe. Oh, yeah. Come on, Lex.
When we see Ramses red hair, we got people making up lame excuses, talking about horrors because some scientific chemical reaction.
Lex. You would need a scientific chemical reaction to produce red hair on somebody with that complexion. That's a rare, odd twist of pigment mutations to produce red hair on somebody with this complexion. That's kind of different. But really, it's simpler than that, Lex. He was 90 when he died. You know, I'll let Jackie Corliss say it. And this is the web page that was reporting that lie. That's down right now. But this some hair page was reporting that they tested his hair and it was really red, even though dude was 90. She wrote that book right there. If you can, I can kind of barely see it. It's like the history of red hair. She says that Ramses died in 1213 BC at the age of 90, and his own hair by that point was white, unsurprisingly. Unsurprisingly to you, but I know somebody who might be surprised by that. And she goes on to say it was dyed with henna. You know, like her skin, the Herero tribe, they like that henna. I told you, when I get hot, every slide is a mic drop. And you're going to have to change my name to Mic Drop Bitch, because I got enough Central Eastern European, and I got some Slav, and I'm going to have to be Mic Drop Bitch, because this is just ridiculous. And, you know, with these facial features and this skin tone, and yeah, you would need some science, Lex, some science. Oh man, they're gonna take this video down with my channel with it. I know it. I know it. Because I know they love Lex. They love Lex, man. They like him more than young Pharaoh now. They keep making me do this.
They'll attack the Hebrews on things like this. Why don't y'all take a DNA test and see if you're really Hebrew? See if you got that name. Well, they did the DNA test on a lot of these pharaohs. And guess what? Even to I heard people try to debunk it with like Tutankhamun, but if either you're gonna accept the white man's science or not, it's not white now. Now all of a sudden it becomes white man's science. Before that they argued, well, it's not white man's science, it's science. But when the white man said Tutankhamun is related to 70% of the Europeans on Earth, now all of a sudden, oh, we can't trust the Europeans. Well, when can we trust them?
First, I want to play some BTF.
Immigrants proved themselves to be quite gullible indeed. I told you what gullible is, didn't I? Gullible is not just somebody who believes falsehoods. It's somebody who's particularly susceptible to lies. It's not just a matter of they believe something that wasn't true. These guys tend to fall for whatever is patently false. The bigger the lie, the more likely they are to fall for it. That's gullible.
Now, Karsten Push, you can look them up. If I go all the way back to JAMA, there's Karsten Push, PhD. He was part of the people that sampled King Tut's genetics and the whole Armana family, right? Okay. Now I got to go back. Don't play. Now, in Live Science, he was talking about that whole thing, about that iGenia. That was a company that claimed that they ran King Tut's ancestry, and that he was, he had, I think, what is it? I don't even have it low. R1B1A2, which is heavy in Western Europe. Karsten Push said, it appears they're trying to sell their DNA testing kit by using the media attention connected to King Tut. Should take iGenia's claims with a grain of salt. Why is he saying this? Because they didn't have enough data to predict that. They were, you know, that just shows you that the prop is different than the actual data. And the actual data wasn't even close to that anyway. It was an isolated haplogroup, and actual data is showing more inter-African genes. I say isolated, but I might be R1B1A2 or close to it. Actually, I am part A2. Great grandpa. That's what's going on. Like, this is the actual dude that was part of the sample. He knows, but even if he didn't say it, all you got to do is look at the actual data. It's not enough to predict the haplogroup. And even if it was, said something, but it's not there. There's no supplementary data that supports that. It was just a media lie. It was just a lie that got floated around. It's like, there's this wise dude. He says this a lot. He says, a well-organized lie defeats a disorganized truth. every time. Ooh wee, and he's right. This is a perfect example of that. Wait till I get to the black media. I really wish I didn't have to go there, but hey. All right. Encore Lex. What's she talking about?
And then you take a crew like the Amara Squad, right? And they'll attack the Hebrews on things like this. Won't y'all take a DNA test?
What is your attachment to Northeast Africa?
To Northeast
Where
Africa.
Egypt now
Okay,
is.
okay, we'll get there. Now, dealing with my history, where I'm from in Nigeria, and I've talked about this before, time and time again, yeah. The people from West Africa were traveling both from to North Africa and East Africa. Now, one of my ancestors, great ancestors, you can check him out, called Oduduwa, yeah. He tells you in the history that we have in our museums, he came from East Africa, from Nubia, over. And he's the one that came over and brought the Yoruba language. Do you know what I'm saying? And then that's why you can see the correlations between the spiritual systems in Nigeria and the spiritual system in Kemet.
And dropping the mic on this shit too. For real, this book goes into more detail about the Yoruba coming from the Sudan. It's not much. It's just good content, you know, and there's two different oral histories from different tribes, different locations. S&P wise, I'm strong Yoruba. STR, I'm weak Yoruba. I'm like nothing on Yoruba. I get 0 in my life score. You could probably dig it up on Egypt search. So what that shows is I'm not recent Yoruba, but I'm ancestral. They're like ancestor. It's not just some. Like if you look, number one, Guinea-Bissau, main ethnicity for Guinea-Bissau, this is me, is the Balanta people. It says among them world traditions, amongst the Balanta, as that they migrated westward from the area known that is now Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. Now with the Luya, as you can see, the Luya, you can kind of barely see it. It goes Yoruba, Yembe. You know, I said at the beginning, this stuff is going to be zoomed out. And then it's like Kenya Bantu and then Luya Kenya. Or yeah, right? Luya Kenya is fourth. Says that same thing. You can barely see it though. But you could look up just your Luya people, Obama's tribe. But they say today, Misri, which is like the Bible name, is Egypt. They say they came from North Africa, from Misri. I took the ancestry test, Lex, but it gets deeper than that. It gets deeper than that. Because he was talking about the Hebrew Israelites too. He was like, why don't you take an ancestry test? He was calling out the Hebrew Israelites. It's about to get deep. And let me tell you first, before I go there, let me tell you first, I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. And I'm just not. Shit, I don't need this. Boy, I gotta be up late and I gotta go to work tomorrow, but I'm not a Hebrew Israelite because I think the first Exodus is part of a group of stories that I don't even come close to imagining. I don't go into the first Exodus. I think the second Exodus, that's dubious, but I'll let them tell it. You know, I'll let Slow-Mo Sands tell it. But I'm open to certain things. The first Exodus, whatever. Come on now, that don't make no sense. That whole Moses story is just fairy tale to me. Okay, and I'm just saying that because based on DNA tribes, I'm Jewish because of the Luya and the Yoruba. Now, why is this? Because why am I a Jew? So are you. Anybody who isn't like East Asian. Like if you're European, you're African, you're Middle Eastern. Because one thing I've noticed, the haplogroups that are assigned to Jewish ancestry, they're suppositions. You know, they're genes by proxy. They're like, oh, you're Jewish, okay, you must have Jewish genes. And they do that in Europe, they do that in the Middle East, and all DNA tribes are saying, well, Africa too. Let me play a little bit more, Lex, and this will be it.
When the white man said Tutankhamun is related to
Wait,
70%.
let me pause this. Just say Tut. Just say Tut, dude. That's why his name is abbreviated to that. Just say Tut. That should be his new theme song. Just say Tut.
On Earth, now all of a sudden, oh, we can't trust the European. Well, when can we trust them?
I'm gonna leave it there because you heard it before. This ain't new. He says some other stuff, so I've responded to some other stuff that isn't in the propaganda video. See, I gotta break it down cold. I gotta really get it broken down because I like to look at things at the core. The problem with Lex and the problem with a lot of people is that they're afraid to die. You know what I mean? That's all it is. And because he's afraid to die, he has to look for reasons to argue against evolution. This whole thing with King Tut is rooted in evolution, just like that whole thing with Umar Johnson and SETI and these elder tribunal, that was rooted in them running from the debate. And if you get to looking at the exterior or something too much, you might just miss the obvious in the core. And this is all about the fear of death. To answer his question, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. I can't tell you to trust the albino that classifies itself as or themselves as white. I can't tell you to trust their science. They're wrong about a lot of shit, and they're bigoted, and they have race bias, and they seem to be a little bit paranoid. You know, don't trust it. You look at it, and if you understand it, then you accept enough of it to where you have that understanding and perspective to what you're looking at next. It's as simple as that. You know what I mean? Stevie Wonder said it best in that Superstitious song. He said, if you believe in something you don't understand, you suffer. He just cut through the chase. You know, he didn't say your society will collapse, your women will start hoeing and all that, your people go hungry. He just said you suffer because that's what it'll lead to. And I refuse to do that. Look, I'm afraid to die. If you're not afraid to die, you're not living. You know what I'm saying? I would love to look at the black mother goddess wake up. The black woman is God and suckle from her bosom. And you know what? Them albino people would too. Because permanent death is not the business. Nobody wants to die and just stay dead. That's only good in massive multiplayer games because, you know, if there's no penalty for dying in them games, people they find a warthog and kick it in the side to get some experience and some pork. You know, motherfucker don't even eat pork. I mean, that's how it is. Like, I got to tell you what it is at the core, man, because people are acting stupid. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about the fear of death. You know what I'm saying? And you understand things. That's it right there. If you understand it, then you accept it or you reject it. But you got to first have some knowledge about it. Look into it. Otherwise, you're just running in fear, and your mind is running in fear, and everything you do is based on fear. Because I proved evolution last year, and I'm melanated. In this video, I proved evolution. All you can run is logical proofs. You can't run absolute proofs when it comes to science. Anything that has enough variable data, an absolute, come on now. And a lot of times you won't even know what the logic adds up to. But what I did is I saw that albino tigers, the albino classified as white and just albinos that aren't classified as white, they got the same pigment mutations or the same genes mutate in a way that reduces melanin. That's the best way I could say it. And it was one pigment gene in tigers. And I said, I bet if I look at other albino animals, I'm going to see that too. I looked at albino animals and I saw pigment gene after pigment gene. And these same pigment genes were the ones that were used to determine that Neanderthals had dark skin because they had the same pigment genes as people with dark skin, other humans. And I'm not going to sit there and say Neanderthals aren't human when I'm speaking English and I'm going along with everything else, but just to add some flavor to my miseducation, because I'm going to just say they're not human and make up some primate stuff and ignore that I'm speaking English, and as an English word, primate includes human. And that's the type of nonsense that's going on, and it comes from the fear of death. And unless you give up that fear, you will always be victim to it. You know, because it's up, you're going to have the fear, I should say. So let me rephrase it. It's not even so much giving up the fear, it's basing your decisions on it, basing your livelihood and all that, you know. The reality is exercise more, Lex, and live longer, enjoy your life. That's it. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. I'm getting to the core of it. All of this nonsense about a 90-year-old dude having red hair, about not being able to speak a language because your nose is too wide, it comes from fear and exploiting fear. With Pharaoh, it's more exploiting you. With him, this is the type of person that is easy to exploit. He's gullible. Now, I want to include this because I know we got a lot of people that are spooky. You know, you release something that's cold with Jewish genetics and you start treating Africans like anybody else, and you release King Tut's ancestry test, and that's hella African, and you're dead at the age of 34. The founder of DNA Tribes passed away 2014. I wasn't going to include this, but when I see stuff like, you know, an ancestry test telling me I'm Jewish, then I know other people are going to look at that. Hey, that's the DNA Tribes. And, you know, I get it. I want to include this to just, hey, unless this family comes out and says something, you can just say it's natural causes, okay? But if his family, you know, says that they was getting threats by some alt-righters or something like that over that ancestry test, and that, then that's different. But for now, I don't know. I haven't heard anything in detail about how he died. But that's young, you know, 34. You start a company. But the other reason why I included this is I look at it. If it was me, if I died and my greatest claim to fame is King Tut's ancestry test. You know, it's not just Tut, it's Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Amenhotep, Queen T. I figure he would want it. He would want a shout out. And I know how people get with that spooky stuff. But one thing I want to also include is I noticed Lex went in on ancient Egypt. And I don't think he understands that when you look at the first dynasty, and this, I don't know for sure if this is really Narmer. The Narmer bus could be, could not be. I don't know. But this had his name on it. This second dynasty is the only person from the first dynasty, supposedly, definitely with him. Definitely. First definite image of an ancient Egyptian king. So a lot of people need to see this because I know people don't look at the art. You know, they ain't really paying attention. This is second dynasty. It's third dynasty. Okay? You know, because Lex got to talking about how everybody focuses on the pyramids. Okay. And how they have aquiline noses. No, he was saying alkaline noses. This is the pyramid age. The pyramid age is old. And there's a lot of people need to be reminded of this because it's not just Lex, man. It's a whole bunch of people will start talking about ancient Egypt, and then they talk about the pyramids, and then they talk about multiracial, and just like Lex was doing. And this is a pyramid age, okay? This is the pyramid age. Now, you start to see some more diversity in their face, maybe with this side image, but whatever. Start to see it. You start to see a little bit of that two faces of ancient Egypt. Actually, I don't think this is it. This looks like Khufu's pyramid. But whatever. This might be his son. This is supposed to be Khafre. And this is Menkaure. Now, Menkaure is depicted. You got different depictions. You know what I mean? That's the pyramid age. Now, look at part 2. Or part 1. This is part 2. Look at part 1. And, hey, you can if you look back at part 1, part 1 talks about the Kenyan Bantu would show up frequently. I'm gonna play Bioko.
And I think it's our fault. I think this is the black media should have been on it. Come on, we got ancestry from King Tut, and we don't talk about it. We shouldn't expect them to talk about it.
It didn't register right away for me that the black media had failed majorly. Bioko said it. You got ancestry from King Tut and you don't talk about it? What do you expect them to do? And maybe I was a little gullible because there was a time when I would have expected the media controlled by the albinos classified as white, with the laws that say they're white. And I would have said that they would have reported King Tut's ancestry test. Like that would have been news. I underestimated how self-centered the albinos are. If you wanna know why I call them albinos, it's because that whole tiger connection and what came out of that. And like I said in part 1, I try to be double objective, but discerning, and I'll call it out when I see it. I'm not gonna play stupid. It was also Bioko who found that ancestry. Well, it was just the haplogroups for the population in the Sudan. Because I always hear so much about this place called Nubia, which I'm not sure even existed. Really, no place called Nubia existed during the time of ancient Egypt. Because I'm talking about Nehesi, to what extent that was even nation. I'm hesitant to even call it nation because I'm thinking more like compound, something else. I'd have thought it would have been on the cover of Ebony magazine. In the 70s, that's probably, I would have expected it to have been like, if they had DNA. Actually, I think they did. But I mean, let's say 85, because that's when they started testing ancient Egyptians, at least 85. But it's an attitude, man. And I saw it with that old thing with TV Run, He's Balanta too. I call him Rolly, because really Umar Johnson, I take issues with him, man. I don't think his school is feasible. Even Bullets laid that out. I'm not as stick to it as on interracial relationships, because I know we're integrated, and I know, sometimes you're just gonna find people that click. People aren't as different as we make it out to be, especially right now where we're not born into with that zeal, that Umar is talking about, that commitment to each other. Like, that's superficial on a lot of levels, regardless of who it's coming from. It usually comes off as being superficial. It's not something you could really get into, but man, and he bombed on that SETI thing. That was just ridiculous, and that was, again, not knowing what was at the core of the issue. He's talking about some damn elder tribunal, had nothing to do with elders at all. This dude said he was worried that he was going to call him out for running from the debate, and he didn't even do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got issues with Umar, and I could go in deeper and much deeper. You know what I mean? But for the most part, it's just a school. It's just because I'll make a suggestion to Umar later on in this, because it's mainly just a school. I don't think it's feasible. Man, he was like a benevolent animist priest with an ankh on that show, Worley. He was the only one sane on that show. I mean, that woman you had on there, she spent the whole segment defending white men. For whatever got crisscrossed, that ended up being her segment. Like, she thought that would be a good idea. Like, what? Where is the concept of power among you hucklebucks? I don't understand it. And even the one that was agreeing with Umar Johnson, he was hucklebuckish because he tried to portray everybody else as being mainstream. You're not mainstream. Just look in the comments. They'll tell you that. And the Republican, man, he just seemed like somebody who's going to be on the death watch list. Like, once life hits him and he realizes what's really going on, it's going to hit him harder, because he's flat-footed. This fool's talking about we rise as a country together. You haven't realized that it is albino mutations first in this country. You haven't seen enough examples of that is freckles first. It's a freckles first economy, son. Smack him around. Like, he's somebody that needs to be slapped like women did back in the old movies when it was just okay to slap women. That dude, he's lost his mind. I'm a Republican, and I know about one Republican that's melanated and half-witted, any type of concept of power, and that's Mr. Research. That's the only Black Republican that represents any type of concept as to why you would relate to that party. I mean, other than maybe some just basic stuff, just anti-democratic. But I mean, there's no reason to split a vote. There's no reason to be a Republican unless they're talking reparations or something. But I mean, just that whole thing, period, that whole segment, like, that's why I'm pro reparation. I would wish I could just get all three of them that Cuz had on his show and just take them to the world courts by the scruff of their neck and just drop them down on the floor and just like, hey, we still got Negroes. You have to get us some lamb, some bread or something, because we still got Negroes. I think that would be compelling. I'd be like, damn, man, we need to redirect some of this money for the starving children. America still has Negroes. That's bad. And, I thought you would have, they would have died out. No. Got some young ones too. The only people that talked about that ancestry test was the Huffington Post and Atlanta Black Star. None of the liberal allies, no Young Turks, no Tom Hartman, them wise. None of the conservative hucklebucks, Jesse Lee, because Larry Elder and I'm kind of, clowning with. I'm really trolling with this. This is like adding him to Black Lives Matter is just, that's just a middle figure to all of y'all. But this right here, yeah, World Star. World Star should have did it. World Star could have really clowned. They would have wowed out for sure. I didn't see nothing on Illinois Nation, but they talk about Jesse Lee Peterson, Anthony Bryan Logan, Thomas Sewell. They act like you can overcome with individual gumption. Okay, if that's your speech, that's your pep talk, individual gumption, then why not add? You built the pyramids, now you want welfare? I mean, why not add that? Why not add that? The one to me that is the worst, though, is the root. That thing, because that's just detrimental. The root is disgusting. I hate the root. I cannot stand the root because all they do is bitch non-stop, and it's not even efficient bitching. Like you could call what I'm doing bitching, talking about these Negroes in 2017, but at least I'm gonna throw in, let's get some money so we can flip it and get everything kicked off. It's all related to reparations. I'd be damned if I complain about racism without talking about, okay, what's going on with Byron Allen and I forget the light-skinned brother name who's been suing the government. I don't care about human rights violations. I don't care about human rights violations. I care about justice for human rights violations so we can flip the buddy. You know what I mean? And get the land, because usually reparations is land. The root just bitches about, and you don't really hear them getting too deep into reparations. They just bitch. You know what I mean? Like, and they do it with an anti-African snarky sense. Like that they called Umar Johnson part of the Ankh right. So they're always doing this with African culture. I'll give you a couple examples. I don't want to get too deep into it because I go on the route for a while and I want to get done with part 2. Let me give a couple examples. This is from the root. He said, perhaps, well, before I give this one, I want to say one thing that stood out where I noticed that the root is messed up is they were going in on Tariq Nasheed being a misogynist. I think misogynist means you hate women. I think it means a woman hater. And they were going in on this because he was talking about how after a certain amount of tattoos, a girl is kind of hoish. That's the extra tattoos is hoish. I had a problem with that, and it's really twofold. One, Tariq Nasheed does enough as far as hiring people to stir the economy. And with the witless, gullible motherfuckers we got, Hidden Colors is a godsend. And, people will say it's Cliff Notes. It's, people get to talking about Hidden Colors. And they act like people know this stuff. They act, like you're talking about Hidden Colors like we're dealing with an intelligent public. We're like anybody learns African history because you got to educate this albino. I would say that's top 4 things to do is educating this albino, because if you're just letting this conveyor belt of bigotry produce generation after generation and you're not telling your history, then hey, you're going to keep getting a neo-Nazi clique. you're just that flat-footed. So I wouldn't want to reach. The root reached on Tariq because he had just named his son after a woman, after Frances Cress Welsing. So he hates women. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not about to name one of my kids after something I hate. So they should have just, okay, we got to reconsider this whole misogynist thing and add some nuance to the conversation. What are you really talking about? And the problem I have is I didn't even hear about Tariq Nasheed until like 2012. But I had heard people who had copied him. I had read their work. And people copied Tariq, and I think they did. Maybe they didn't, but I've seen examples over and over again. Like Vinda Carlo, he was saying the same thing, that a certain amount of tats and you're dealing with a hoe. And they wouldn't say like that's the end all be all, because you could be like from a biker gang or something, but all things being equal, that's one of your top 3 indications that you're dealing with a hoe. Chest tattoos and all that. And I listened to that game from Vinda Carlo, and it worked. And I later, once I heard Tariq Nasheed, I started hearing Vinda Carlo in Tariq Nasheed, and I think Vinda Carlo borrowed heavily from Tariq. That's just because he came out 2011. Tariq was doing this in 2000. You know what I'm saying? But that's the thing. They're not going to reach to bitch about the white man that's saying the same thing. They only reach to bitch about black men because that's their audience. They lack the creativity to inspire people to think. So all they do is the root settles in on finding bitter women to gossip and bitch with. It's sad. And now their thing is they want to target Hotep. You know what I'm saying? Like Ankh Wright. And they'll go and talk about what Hotep means and just liken it to something they don't even know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And what's worse than that is while they're identifying this Hotep thing, they're practicing bitch. They're just bitching. Like there's no upside to the root. That's why I don't know. I'll go back to that. This is the root. Perhaps the worst thing one can be in the Hotep half-woke universe is a white man. A white man is just a Caucasian male, but the white male is ultimate personification of evil, power, lust, and leviathan that perpetuated injustice, greed, inequality throughout history. The white man enslaved black people for 400 years, even though black proxies may have pulled the trigger. The hell does that mean? Black proxies, that is like bitch shit for saying I don't really have the time or the wherewithal to research the involvement in Africa coming from so-called black proxies or involvement in African slave trade or whatever. The white man killed Malcolm X. Again, sneak shit. The white man is an oppressor. The white man is evil, but the white man only lives in the Cliff Notes version of history. The full text is that misogyny, racism, and homophobia are intertwined in the structure that existed from the dawn of man. It is centuries old story of dominance and subjugation. Centuries old. Centuries? We're talking centuries. Yes, centuries old. Like that is just reaching the bitch. They can't show examples of this culture of homophobia and misogyny and racism in African culture. So they just project this stuff onto African culture anyway. And for that, I say, fuck the root. They got to do better than that. That's just ridiculous. And that's just one example. It's just projection, assumption, no evidence, no research, because that's just worthless. It's worse than worthless. It's detrimental. It's gossipy, shallow writing. You know, like Erica Badu. Where's Anak? 3 baby daddies on child support. They never gonna talk about Erica Badu. She's not gonna be a Hotep. You know, how could you have a better example of niggerish and Hotep than an Ankh and like 3 or 4 baby daddies on child support? And here's the thing, like Tariq don't even teach dirty macking. You know, it's not beat the thighs at all costs. Like I give you the example of how he doesn't teach dirty macking and how his stuff works. because most of what I see that works with Tariq, I was already doing because I had studied that dude Vindicarlo. I'll give you an example of something that's just from Tariq. I didn't hear Vindicarlo say this, or maybe once I started studying and the stuff works. I mean, I had no problem with it. I wanted to bump up my sex life. I was, so I studied. And one thing that Tariq says, an example of how he doesn't talk about dirty macking, is he say, man, don't try to take a girl to a place just to get the panties off. Don't impress them. Don't try to impress them, spend money or whatever. Go to a place that you want to go to. You can't be cheap. That's another thing. You can't have black power and cheap rent. But anyhow, go to a place you want to go to and take them with you because they're fortunate enough that you decided that you would take them with you. It's that simple. I mean, some dudes, they go a long time without realizing that. I was probably early 30s before I was like, oh yeah, So really, dirty macking doesn't really work anyway. If you have any type of conscious, or listen to Mr. Research, that's the other side of the equation, but I'm not going to go there right now. I do want to say one more thing on this topic, though. Ben from the Amin Ra Squad mentioned that the reason why that sort of, I want to say liberalish, that's not kind of an insult to the word liberal, the hucklebuckish side, social justice warrior, even though a lot of times they don't get along with the hucklebucks because they don't dress nice enough for them. But that TV1 group, that Out of Touch group, the problem they have with people who are African centered is that they're not like with the homosexuality. And at first I thought, that whatever, no, that ain't. But I'm starting to see that there is something to that. I'm not sure if it really should be like that. I mean, because who besides Irritated Genie was really talking about rounding up homosexuals and like, we got to kill these homosexuals first. When he started talking like that, even King Noble called him an agent. I remember too, because King Noble was specifically, saying, and he's talking about killing random hippies and homosexuals, first, all the enemies we have. And I think Tariq was calling him Agent Heavy. People weren't really into that. You know what I mean? People ain't really into finding somebody who's gay and beating them up. That's not a populist issue. It's a popular issue to talk about, but it's not a populist move the needle issue. It's a stagnant issue. And there's a lot of stagnant stuff that comes from gay rights because it ends up traveling easier, traveling harder, traveling with more support. And I'm maybe more on the other side of that anyway, because I don't think that this homosexual agenda is worth it now. I'm not, like, I can talk about Lex Vortex being gullible. He's not finna to spread his butt cheeks for the fellas because it's trending on Twitter. You know what I mean? Nobody's really that into it. Like, it's not working. Heterosexuality is kicking ass, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And with all these abortions, and that's another thing. Like, people, to be an objective thinker, you kind of have to have a limit where, okay, women's rights are cool until you start reaching crazy numbers for abortions, and these abortions are birth control abortions. It's not like mama was going to die and leave kids dead. It's not like somebody was raped. Most of these abortions are birth control abortions, and When do you start women's writing yourself to death? I should say women's rights in yourself to death. When is enough too much? And I can't take that stance because that's my stance. You know, I'm like, if once you start having abortion clinics ordering Yankees hats as parting gifts, you got too many abortions. But then I can't turn around and say the homosexual agenda is doing anything when you got all these surplus babies getting yanked. So, hey, that's just me. I had to throw that out there because I think that this whole gay stuff should not be any type of brick wall when it comes to uniting. And I do want to mention also the Hotep Nation, because they're behind a lot of this, because all they do is troll. You got bitches and trolls, internet trolls and bitches, and they just bicker on Twitter. And I watch them. And I'm like, man, eventually they're going to do something. They keep bitching, they keep trolling. That's why I don't take black feminists seriously. Because they agitate people until the people start trolling them, then they complain about it. And why are they, like the Hotep Nation, again, what do they do but troll people? And then you got the pseudo scholars with bells on their feet, just making up stupid shit. Like I was listening to Taj Tariq Bey, and this guy is fired talking about how you can sue the government and the steps to get reparations, and then he jumps into just nonsense pseudo shit, talking about the ancient terminology for cavemen. Like, who cares what they called cavemen in 1920? And then you have the whole Yaka. In the Yucatan, they were engineering white people by mixing them with an ancient 1920s definition of a caveman. Like, it's, huh? You know what I mean? Like, this brother, that's the older generation of pseudo scholars, and then you got the new generation, young Pharaoh, talking about people's nose are too wide to speak a language. Also, you got the black geeks. They the only person to really get into these genes was only people, I should say, Bioko, Tukler, Swinnett, a handful of people on Egypt Search. Where's our geneticists? Then you got the ones that, like in Ngozi, and I can't say this for sure because this is like hearsay, but supposedly Ngozi will just say DNA tribes isn't real because he's sitting on some old Afro-Asiatic shit. When the hell else would they just trust a Jew like that? You know, I'm just saying. I don't have this whole conspiracy thing with Jews, but other people have. But they're okay with the Greenberg language families. I'm not. I'm not okay with it. And it has nothing to do with him being Jewish. I'm not okay with it because I can go on Google Translate, pull up some African languages and compare them to ancient Egyptian. And if nobody were to tell me which one was Afro-Asiatic and which one was Nilo-Saharan, which one was Niger-Congo, I wouldn't know based on how they're related to ancient Egypt. And I'm seeing our brightest, and I don't know if it's true with Ngozi, even though I've heard them kind of go on about Afro-Asiatic, but I'm seeing some of our brightest people just default into some coonery where they will be like what Corey Oakham says, they're white supremacy on cruise control because they're driving it for them and they're driving it better. They failed. You know, I can give him a pass because I can give the Black Authority a pass. And that's just because of Gentrify and legislation that came with Gentrify. And I'd recommend getting Gentrify. Now, I did disagree with him on on with Jason Black. I did disagree with Jason Black on Black Panther. Now, because his whole thing was all you comic book geeks are ignoring how you're being portrayed as spear chucking, bold lip in the wearing. I'm like, dude, I'm not a comic book geek. I ain't got no problem with the spears. I got no problem with the bow on the lip. I got no problem with the dude named Man-Ape even. I'm just, and you know what? Who else doesn't have a problem with it? White man will put a tail on their ass to be armor. You know, all the shit they talk about Arabs and rags on their head. They put a rag on their head, a Zosa collar around their neck. I have to say it. I don't want to leave the Congo. No. So happy in the jungle, I refuse to go. Yeah. Want no bright lights, false teeth, doorbells, landlords. I make it clear that no matter how you coax me, I'll stay right here. Don't want to leave the Congo. No. I'm so happy in the jungle, I refuse to go. Don't want no jailhouse, shotguns, fish hooks, golf clubs. I got my spears. So no matter how you coax me, I'll stay right here. I got things like atom bomb. So do I. I'm going to end part 2 with a lesson or two, a solution / lesson. And the reason why is I see a lot of this. Peace to the Dagger Squad. Lion Lex is an idiot. No, not this. We are being killed outright in the streets by our open enemy, and we're still fighting each other over nothing. Oh, other over nothing of real solution. Okay. Yo, let me give you some solutions from my data box, man, because when I started studying ancient Egypt, I said, look and find something. Look, keep looking, ask questions. Ask so much questions. You know, because I this was before I saw how people act, because I know they get to, like, people get to correcting, you know, like Judy Mott, Shaka, I Gave the Truth. They get to correcting young Pharaoh, and people are like, why did you slander the brother? Slender, salacious. They start, you know, using some legal terminology on you. That's new to me, but I'm like, why can't we unite? That's what it'll lead to. So then it'll be, why can't we unite? But even before, like this kind of jumped out at me on the peripheral. This was an obvious one, but I'll get to the other one, which is mainly what came from, you know, plant and logic. But as you can see, the lie traveled to Spike TV. They talk about recent genetic tests. Where is it? Oh yeah, DNA evidence. From recently discovered DNA evidence. So I don't know if they're talking about ancestry, but this is what they produced as Tut. So a well-organized lie defeats a disorganized. You know why? Because there's some money behind it. These movies didn't bomb. They made money. At least they could be pulling the wool, but foreign, just the word Egypt, Exodus. Even though I would not think of doing no goddamn Exodus movie, but Egypt alone, just, you know, 31 domestic, but 150 worldwide, 150 million, 288 million. Now, remember, part one, I showed that ancient Egyptians were objectively Khoisan, had some Khoisan exclusive markers. And that's the last time I remember seeing a Khoisan in a movie. You know, and they need some bread because they hoboing in Africa. That's like one of their things is you see them hoboing. You know, it's like a sitcom because there's this one video on YouTube where it's a Khoisan, like a group of Khoisan people, like a little family, and they got this albino blonde girl, you know, like one of them South African Dutch albinos. And they're traveling together like a sitcom, and they got a pet lion. I'm not kidding. And they're just hoboing, you know, picking fruit, bathing in the river, you know, scratching their ass with twigs. You know, so it makes for good television. You know, if that's funny. I watch all of them, and actually, it ain't even so much like a sitcom. It's like it's real, like it's like a real reality show. They trying to eat, you know. And them albino chicks, them ones from Europe, man. Of all things to end up doing, that's what they like. That's what they she's having fun hoboing. You know, and I'm saying, you know, I'm not messing with any type of director that does not feature Khoisan Patois, you know, in a diverse cast. And not this idea of diversity either. This is, I showed you his parents, his parents' parents. Now, when I planted that logic forest, I just kept asking questions because even though I wasn't contextualizing it, you know, I looked at white supremacy as just the stuff you see in the movies, whatever, like historical thing. But the more I started studying ancient Egypt, I could see that there was a sea change in power. Melanated people had lost out, and I wanted to see if I could find some answers to turn this albino apocalypse. And I need more time though. I'm still working on it. I've asked a lot of questions. I still need to read more Amos Wilson, but I've asked a lot of questions. I've done plenty research. I've seen variables. And it comes back to this over and over and over again. So as I end part two, I just want to show you, to me, what I've seen, where if you're not familiar with a logic tree, you look it up and then conceptualize a logic forest, narrow or begin to narrow your outcomes, because a lot of times you're getting the same answer with different questions. And that's what happened here. You know, like if you played SimCity, you start off laying down tracks. You know what I'm saying? You start off with pipes, wires, a power plant. You clear out, and everything that you're doing, from the landscaping to the electricity to the coal, the power grids, comes from science. And this is true because I like the strategy games. Stronghold. You want to build a fortress. If you got rocks to quarry, they quarrying rocks over here. You do that. But you're in the woods, you get your logsmen out. You get your hunters because you got to eat. And you don't have time to wait for that next crop. These are hunters. That's a hunting dog. In Shogun Total War 2, they cut through the chases. It's like you got to know, you got to go down a path of science. And then you step out, and if you have somebody on the coast, you want to build up boats, trade partners. This is Shogun Total War 1. Start off with your basics, which gives you the acumen, the knowledge to build deeper, to build the next level stuff. First you need somebody that can cut the wood, and then you want somebody that can shape it. Then you got a bow, and then you need, some metal for the arrowhead. So you need miners. In these type of games, it's all nation building and protecting your nation. All nation building type strategy, right? So I'm looking at that, and I'm studying ancient Egypt. And then I start to see what you have here. This isn't all of them. This is just, I think it's like God's List. I don't even know what this website is called. But they've got about 400 or so, 300. Egyptologists, they estimate it's in the 2000s. Now, think about that for a minute. If you got 2,000 gods, and all of these gods occupy domains. Now, when I started to see what these temples produce, it became obvious. You know what I mean? And let me just go through some of these rivers. Okay. War. This is Sekhmet, so it's a strategy of war. It's more than just war. It's healing. It's a strategy for the sake of strategy, logic, science. But when you're at war, it becomes a war deity. Amenhotep, industry and manufacturing. These temples, that's what they worked on. Like, if you go look at the Black church, typically it's music, and they might feed some people that are hungry, and they'll minister to some couples, maybe pull some money for the homeless, for a homeless family. It's noble. It's not enough. ISIS, church focus on motherhood, something that a lot of us are lacking. Love, something we're also lacking. The philosophy around love. And it's almost the same thing, psychology and animist religion. Very similar, because you're looking at everything as an actual concept. Everything has a spirit. Love has a spirit. Creating, Ptah, this is my favorite, because it can be mundane things to the universe. Water, and there were, because Tefnut, they're working with that. Banjabet, bureaucracy, Reret, childbirth. These are all natural sciences, all necessary sciences. The moon, dealing with travel, dealing with migrations, long distance trade, genitalia, penis and vagina. And I know y'all looking at that like, what? And the Hebrew Israelites, they'll turn that into all kinds of perversions. But let me tell you, they lay that, you messing with a female and she lay the louse on you, or the clap, the priest of Kabesha, if they'd have some salve for you. Get you a shaving kit, so they won't have no places to hide. Wisdom, that's something we lacking, especially after real black atheists taken down. We attack wisdom. Chaos, that's something we got, but we don't orchestrate it. We don't sow it in our enemies. Funerals, that's something we always gonna need. Our time is limited. Here's another one. What's this one? Domestic protection. Bodyguard. That's best. And best is also dance. Festivity. See, I kind of understand that. Europe went through the same thing. When they thought it was just a good idea to kill their scientists, they experienced what Stevie Wonder talked about. You could add that to superstitions. You believe in something you don't understand, you suffer. You start killing your scientists. If they interfering with your escapism, you're going to suffer. in Europe suffer. And I get the appeal to one guy, because the only thing crazier than one guy is a whole bunch of them up in the sky playing backgammon. So you people get passionate. There's one and true God, one. But there hasn't been a reckoning where we stood back and we looked at it and said, well, what did we lose when we went from one concept of everything? Animism all over the world had a concept of a one God, but its manifestation was like infinite. So you can have as many gods as you want as a representation of that. And hasn't been a reckoning for what you lost when you lost that. You know what I mean? When you go from having, and this is just an example, I could go to, they got gods like this for everybody, you know, all over the world. This was the system. When you lose all of this, and you got gods on the block, you know, because people say ancient Egyptian culture, or they'll just say African culture. And I'll hear this, that people, that Africans don't consider themselves to be African. They consider themselves to be blah, blah nation and blah, blah tribe. And it's a needlessly divisive thing, because I don't agree with it. Because it seems like you remove the Abrahamics from the equation. You ask typical everyday African, like, hey, does your culture, do y'all do you honor your mother? Do you honor your father? Do you honor your elders? Do you believe in magic? You know what I'm saying? Do you believe in science? Do your priests believe in science? I started exploring a little bit more. Do your priests swing fly whisks around? Y'all got fly whisks? Do your priests on occasion, do they wear leopard skin? Y'all eat bush meat? You speak the language of the bushman when you travel, when you do trade from long distance? It ends up being the same everywhere. You have multiple deities on the block. People say they got different deities you got different deities in ancient Egyptians. Well, who didn't? You know what I mean? Everybody had different deities. Ancient Egyptians had different deities. Like when you have this many, it's on the block. That's the thing people don't realize is block gods. It's not, it's neighborhood, block, another temple. Boom, boom, rare red. Now you know, somebody used to be alive. They put it, you know, it's like they canonize him. They make him a god. Industry, manufacturing. You know, this system is unifying because it's been there. It's been done. And this is what melanated people got away from when they switched to the whole one and true. And now they get to breaking their own shit, talking about it's an idol. Who told you it's an idol? You know, it's a pagan. That was a pagan. And then what's sad, but the way I see it is you can't beat what you already have. You got to work with what you have, especially when you have it like this. Chancellor Williams said it. Everywhere you go in Africa, it's the same culture. These are, look at this. Look at all this. These are all churches. Detroit. Block deities without sciences. They're all doing the same thing. They're having tambourine slapping contests when you go up in them. Same with Jamaica, New York, Atlanta. These are mosques over in Atlanta and Detroit too. You know, they don't slap the tambourine. They do some other rituals. Where the sciences, you got to put the sciences back in the churches, man. I implore you. You know, this is what you do with Umar Johnson's school. Even if he had $700 million, he could only set it up for it to maintain itself. It'd have to be a private school, and only people who got that type of money are going to be able to do it. So it's not really a populist thing. But if you put sciences in all of these, you put this in this, no more albino apocalypse. It's done. These are mostly black churches. This is a hood in Chicago where they got enough crime to where you can exaggerate it and use it as an excuse to gentrify. Bama. And we got the internet so they can be communicating with each other. You have the water deities like that. You don't have a problem with lead. And this is one of the issues I have with the root, because one of the definitions for a hotep and why you see it attached to people's name is it involves a journey. And that journey, to my knowledge, and I don't have any examples of this other than just how it is on people's names, it involves accomplishments in that journey, in a field, in a school, and through a temple. You know, to the point where like I could call Tariq Nasheed Document Hotep, or I could call the root Hotep bitch. You know, that's the problem I have with it, because that's it, man. That's what that whole, all the questions came back to. You have to do something with this church. You can't have a tambourine slapping contest. Look, because people gonna love the gods. You know, Jesus did some good shit. He Ho washed his feet, gave him a foot job. So all the other stuff you have a Ho do, he does that. He turns water into wine. He smited the Pharisees. They gonna love the gods. You know, it don't even matter what God they love. It's what do their churches produce? What do their temples produce? What do their mosques produce? And if they don't start producing, then you start building, because we got Republicans in and they don't give a damn about the separation of church and state, and neither should you. It's got to go back in. And I heard the excuses, and I'm not buying the excuses. One of the excuses, the worst one to me, is when they say that Christians don't believe in science. When I hear that one, I'm like, yes, they do. The problem is you don't know science, because y'all definitely idiot. If you look, when Christians go to church, don't they drive cars? Don't they speak on cell phones, or do they just send mail to people? They just deal with the post office. Hey, don't they wear clothes? And they eat food. I'm sure they eat food. And when they digest it, they shit in a toilet that goes through pipes into a sewage and contamination and all that. I don't know what they do with it. Even actually, I kind of do, and I don't want to think about it. And if one of them has a seizure or something and falls out in church, they don't just deal with magic. They don't just get to, and casting spells. They take them to the hospital. So don't tell me they don't believe in science. You know what I mean? That's a lazy excuse. Like I was going to say, you got it. There's nothing stopping you from opening up tax-free church. You can pick any god you want. Dr. Mod said, you judge a religion by the fruit it bears. What is your church producing? What sciences have your church mastered? Because, man, somebody comes to me and they start evangelizing, I'm on a complete code they haven't seen before. I'm like, you got a God? What does your God do? You know, what sciences do you have? And what does your church produce? What are you studying? What are you exploring? What are you thinking about? You know, then you hear that Trump sold out excuse. Like Trump bought him a bunch of Hucklebuck pastures and they all sellouts. No. Trump bought like less than 1% of 1%. And a lot of them was like, they weren't following Trump anyway. So, you know, Trump basically bought one of these. Pick one. You have the rest. If you unite the gears for your civilization, because these are the gears for ancient Egypt. These are the gears for their civilization. It's the gears for all ancient civilizations until very recent times when it was taken out of the church for some people. Some people still keep it in. Taken out of the temples for some people still keep it in. And moved to schools and all that. Another excuse I get is the Sonnet or Jesus excuse. They're like, man, we're too messed up. I just watched Sonnet or Jesus, and oh man, I watch that and I wonder too. That does get to me a little bit. I will say though that if you get these gears moving, it'll produce a better generation that isn't gonna, just fall out and start samboing for white Jesus. It's everything. I mean, Dr. Umar Johnson said he wanted to like teach helicopter piloting in his school. Well, this is Umar Johnson's school. That's how you move the needle in a populist way. If it's just, a handful of doctors, plastic surgeons, I shouldn't even say doctors now. If it's just the surgeons' kids, and the 3 Afrocentric athletes or something like that, then that's not really moving the needle. It might produce some people that can one day, but you're delaying something that you're eventually going to have to get to anyway. Just get to it now. You know what I mean? And there will be a time where I will lead this crusade if nobody's following me. And if I'm out there, because I am uncold, they got to telling me about how my soul is going to be saved. I'm like, from what? Okay. That's going to do with part 2. Part 3 should be coming sooner than part 2. Part 2 is a little bit long. I had to get preachy, but it kept coming back to this. The more I knew about the old cultures of the Nile Valley, the more questions I asked about what worked, it just kept coming back to this. And you'll have churches right next to each other, and they got petty disagreements. When now you can just, the key is to get them all on one grid, one website, networking heavy. So that, because I said I was going to throw something to Umar. This is it. This is your school. You got to do something with these things. Because if all they doing is throwing up their hands and slapping tambourines, that's not enough. And I know many of them do more. And y'all say, 42, my church, man, we're playerlistic. And it's not just the pastor with a Maybach. We got money, and we got investments and this. And there are some churches that will teach you how to invest money, and they're interested in your financial well-being. I know that does exist. It's just that they're not networked with each other. They're like, we do this, and you guys are all fucked up. Now, all of you have to have a science down. At least one. You big churches got to have a school of sciences. We need to be able to rely on you. A lot of those gods of war, like a lot of them are like based on vengeance. Well, I won't say a lot, or at least one of Sekhmet's definitions is vengeance. So we need to be able to come to y'all and like, hey, there's somebody that needs some poison in their drink. Okay? Because we got some out in front enemies. And now we come to one of these churches, then they'll say, forgive, brother. I'm like, well, you know damn well you can go through that Bible and find some justifications not to forgive. So don't, if you're going to use it as a tool, then use it as a tool to help you win. I'm not telling people, I know people going to love the gods. I pray to all them fuckers, all of them. And some of them I cuss out. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say any, as an animist, I can't talk about you Abrahamics. Y'all usually only got one God, some angels, and some saints. I just basically got reality in its manifestation. Not a big enough difference. This religious argument, I'm done. You'll hear me talk about young Pharaoh before I give a damn about somebody's God. Because I realize people gonna love the gods. So that's it. Part 3 is coming. And part 3, I'm going to I'm going to hand the evidence to you like a dog laying on his back, asking for his belly to be rubbed. So it's coming soon.